To self-prefer single ladder system to dual system, I'd like to invite Prime Minister to start the debate. Here.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, there is no worse disservice than making the wrong choice. And we tell you that this debate is particularly contentious because we have to choose a world. We have to choose a world between the single ladder system and the dual ladder system. And we think that in order to best equip people for the future, be able to equip them with the things that they need in order to remain competitive in an ever-changing geographical and globalized world, we need to be able to prefer a single ladder system. What is this debate about? A few key points of framing before I move on to my argumentation. Firstly, the reason why we're having this debate is because we live in a world of scarcity. There's not enough things to be able to meet our demands. We have scarcity of resources in terms of money or economic conditions. There's resources of capacity, meaning I can't be two places at once. I'm not Hermione Granger with a time turner doing like 3 tournaments at the same weekend. And ultimately, all of us are at the consequence of time being the most scarce resource of all. Meaning, we all have how many decades here on the earth, and we need to be able to make the most out of that in order to be happy, in order to be fulfilled, or to achieve whatever we want in life. And we think that education is a means to an end to be able to perpetuate you or bring you to where you want to be. And we think that people are going to be better off in a single ladder system. We think that this debate is about what academic system is best, and this is for secondary education or in high school. We want to be able to equip them for a very volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and disruptive, rapidly changing world we're living in. Things with the proliferation of open AI and large language models such as ChatGPT and all of those things you may be familiar with, things like DALL-E, and emerging trends like blockchain, cryptocurrency, self-driving cars, etc., things which make the world a more interesting and better place. And the common denominator is a lot of these things are ultimately disruptive and they're going to change the job market. What are standards in this debate, right? We want to be able to set them up for success, to be able to be the most flexible in order to pivot, ladies and gentlemen, because we, government, and everyone here, I assume, we don't know the future. We're not fortune tellers. These trends can still change. The world 5, 8 years ago is very different from the world we're in today, and these things are likely to change in the future. And we think that we want to set them up in a way where it's most flexible, and ultimately, we think that given the uncertainty of the job market, people are going to be more competitive when they're actually more equipped and more focused in a single ladder system as opposed to the latter, or as opposed to the counterfactual, wherein we have to understand that the nature and rate of change of things like technology and robotics are ultimately going to change things. But sure, go ahead.
The point about scarcity is your preference, not the preference of the students and the parents that you do not listen to.
These things are going to change in this environment. By scarcity, I mean I can't learn coding and at the same time do vocational skills and at the same time be a good father or at the same time be a good son. We have limited time to be able to choose what we want to do, and the problem then becomes spreading yourself out too thinly, which is ultimately the harm that happens in a dual-laddered system, wherein people are having this parallel kind of track wherein they're going to be prepared to either go academic or vocational, but that is as opposed to a single-ladder system, which is more focused on a specific career, meaning you have more academic units at the expense of vocational skills, you probably have more research hours, internships, on-the-job trainings, etc. Things aligned to your major, aligned to maybe a postgraduate or a graduate degree you want to look at. But very clearly, what is that counterfactual, right? We think that there are more benefits to a single ladder system, and we think that's a preferred choice, and people rather be able to do it. We're willing to bite the bullet of less vocational jobs, things like pottery, basket weaving, cooking to an extent, and all sorts of things which may fall into that category. Now, what is my argument, all right? The argument is about a risk analysis of the single ladder system and the dual ladder system in a very rapidly changing environment. Because we have to understand that the thrust of focus in a single ladle system is that it shows you that you have to be disciplined to commit to a particular career. And now their side might say, oh, don't you get less flexibility on your side because you're not going to be able to choose. But we think that the difference between an SLS or a DLS, single or double, is that in the dual system, you're essentially spreading yourself out too thinly. Wherein sure, you're still learning basic things that a high school student might learn, but this comes at a trade-off because you also have to work. You also have to go to a factory or learn from a master, learn from a protege, and really understand what it's like to be exposed to that particular field. And that comes at the consequence of you being less competitive, meaning people in a single ladder system are more likely to get access to Ivy League or related opportunities as opposed to someone who becomes boxed in or a function of a particular industry. And the harm here, ladies and gentlemen, is at the point in which that industry gets disrupted, these people are less likely to be able to pivot and less likely be able to get another kind of job outside their sphere of control. That is as opposed to particularly in a single ladder system wherein you're going to be able to career switch and be able to be employed. Let's say I'm a business student and I get a marketing job, for instance, in Seoul, and let's say I get laid off or something happens to my industry, let's say that's soap, for instance. These things are largely transferable. Let's say if I go to Vietnam, or I go to the US, or I get a scholarship and leverage my graduate and postgraduate experience to be able to compete. But what happens to the person in a dual ladder system who becomes boxed in their own circumstance wherein they become limited to that particular industry? They are less likely to be able to switch because the point in which they decide to do, they don't have enough academic units or relevant work experience. The joke goes, right, on LinkedIn, if you're a fresh graduate, they're asking you for 3 years of experience. But the point in which you actually are not able to meet that because you don't have enough academic experience, you become less competitive. Sure, vocational things are important, but we think that these things are likely to be disrupted by things like artificial intelligence, things like 3D printing, things like robotics and advanced technology, which are changing the world already. That's why we have so many layoffs across the tech space. Want more things which are ultimately replaceable because society wants to make things more efficient. So, if we want to better equip these people for the future, if we want to be able to allow them a chance to be able to be relevant, we have to do it now, and ultimately that begins in a world where majority of people are going to focus from the get as opposed to spread themselves too thinly. For all these reasons, I'm very proud to propose.